Hello everyone, it's Lucy here, and today I am bored, so I've decided to make this video. I have a lot of music in physical form. I don't talk about this music often with people online. I mostly just show them to people who happen to visit me, so that I have something to yap to them about. And I have decided today I will unleash this evil on all of you. So get ready. I have vinyl records here. A whole bunch of them. I don't think you're ready to see the rest that's not vinyl records. So, yeah. First of all, I have Clipping, the Shooter EP, which is one of my favorite Clipping releases. I feel like this one is very underrated compared to other shit they did, mostly because it's an EP, and EPs are often kind of underappreciated. And also, it comes with an inner sleeve. Wow. But most importantly, let me try to somehow grip this in a way that's not triggering to all the audiophiles who happen to be watching this probably. It has this absolutely gorgeous color. This nice little turquoise with like a black swirl type of thing. It's gorgeous. Like with most of these like early Clipping releases, actually fuck it, I might make this an ASMR video because I'm bored. Yeah, just like with a lot of these early Clipping releases. Is that a good word? I don't know if that's a good word for ASMR. You can tell me in the comments below if this is a good word for ASMR. Either way, Clipping, Shooter EP, just like a lot of these early Clipping releases, it opens up with an intro track, which is mostly just the V-Dix rapping over no beat, and then you just get blare with noise, because of course. And then it has a track, Shooter, which is one of my favorite Clipping tracks, mostly because I love 12-tone serialism, and this track utilizes a bass line that's made using a 12-tone row. And I think that's really cool because you don't see this in hip-hop very often. Then there is the track Back Up 2021, which this is a remake of an older track called Back Up. This is the re-release, so the re-release has a different track. The original version of Back Up had a verse from Antoine, who did some awful shit. I don't remember what he did, but he did some awful shit. So they replaced his verse here. Then you have the title track Wriggle, which samples Wriggle Like a Fucking Eel by White House. White House are a power electronics group from the UK. And they are not one of my favorites. I don't really like White House much. Except, I like some of their stuff. But I like the sample of them here. I think it's very interesting in its execution. Because they turn it into a Chicago footwork beat. Then you have the track Hot Fuck No is a very awkward song to listen to. And it features the Heartbreak. That's like all I remember about it. And then there is the track Our Time, which I find very underrated and underappreciated. It's one of my favorite clipping tracks. It has an absolutely beautiful hook from, I don't want to butcher the name, Nyla Middleton, I guess. And yeah, it also has a bunch of remixes. The only name I recognize from the remixers is Homemade Weapons. But yeah, that's been Shooter by Clipping. Next up we get into 22 A Million by Bon Iver. This is an album that I've been obsessed with a couple years back for a good while. This one has a bit of a thicker plastic sleeve, like the cover, like the paper sleeve, but like it's covered in plastic. You get a little bit of a different tone, and I think it sounds really nice. Hell yeah. It has a very cool cover with a lot of numerological symbols, and it opens like this. And in one of these sleeves you have the record, and in the other sleeve, well, first of all you have the credits here, which are also written in a very interesting way. You know, again, very detailed, a lot of dedications, a lot of words. I like that. I like reading my music. And essentially, also you get this lyric sheet here, which is very interesting. You can get some page turning sounds. And what I find interesting about the lyric sheet is the way it's written, because you have this sort of, you know, it's not really written linearly or like completely linearly. You got all sorts of like different branches here. You got samples being listed with like different fonts compared to just Infernon's vocals. You got this note here, which I don't actually know the origin of it, but it has, to my knowledge, not much to do with the song itself. Wait, no, it is. Yeah, no, I think this is the original draft of the lyrics? It might be. The fuck do I know? But yeah, Bon Iver are a great band. Well, Justin Vernon is just one guy, but at the same time, like, they are a band, but most of the stuff they do is just done by one guy. It's hard to really tell if I would call it a one-man project or a full band. Whatever. They are great, and you should listen to them because they take like a lot of like modern like singer-songwriter folk, and they add a lot of really interesting electronic elements to it and various other influences. Okay, let me get the record. Let me get the booklet. Oopsies. That's. If anyone wants it, you can have this. Next up, we get an album that's a little bit more controversial. That album being Cherry Bomb by Tyler the Creator, which, I mean, Tyler as a whole is not a controversial artist, of course, he's quite popular. But Cherry Bomb is definitely his most divisive album. It was the period between his sort of like edgy personas and his homosexuality. He's been trying a lot of new things on here. There's a lot of more like parts that are just him singing compared to like Bastard and Goblin. It is once again a completely different plastic sound. I like that. There is various cover variations for this one. This one has this photo on the back. But this is just the main cover variation that I got a couple months back. Oh, this was like over a year ago at this point, Jesus. The vinyl record itself, I can try to handle this as carefully as possible, comes in this beautiful, transparent ocean blue color, which I absolutely adore. But yeah, this album has a lot of very loud songs, definitely louder than what most people are used for from Tyler. And I like those songs a lot. I love the title track. A lot of people hate them, but I hate it. But I actually really like the song Cherry Bomb. Then there's of course Def Camp, Buffalo, Pilot. All of those being fairly kind of more like aggressive-ish, especially Def Camp and the title track. But then you also have some weird tracks. I forgot the name of it, but what was the one that was like... it's either right after or right before the title track. It has some very sexual lyrics, and it's honestly funny as hell, but it is one of Tyler's least popular songs for a good reason. There's So Fucking Young, which is also kind of weird. But he also has Smuckers, which is incredible. I don't think anyone is going to disagree with that. Let me put that back on the pile. But if anyone's wondering, the records are on a pile just for the purpose of this video. I normally store them upright so that they don't squish each other. Next up, we have the quintessential terminally online album, that being Veteran by JPEGMAFIA. I got this one in Denmark on tour. While I was touring with Vikia and with Goodipal and some other people. I personally really like this album, even though I get that JPEGMAFIA is very annoying as a person, especially on on Twitter. If you've ever seen him have any meltdown, you know how he is. Sounds nice. Good cover sound. However, despite me not really being a fan of him as a person, I really like his music. Because of course I do. I'm transgender, of course I have to, it's given. But essentially, yeah, what I like about this is this little sheet that comes with the record. Oops, let me try to get it out. It's a modified version of the military discharge form. Yeah, DD Form 24, which is also a name of a track on this album. Except it has some changes to it, such as the spaces for your PSN ID and your IG handle and your Grindr account. It's silly, I like this. Oops, let me just get it back. Out of all the tracks, the ones that I like the most are probably Rainbow Six. That one is an incredible piece of cloud rap. Then there is Panic Emoji, which is also quite underrated, I'd say. You know, you don't hear people mention it much. I was never a big fan of 1539 North Calvert. I mean, it's great, it's a good track, but I just don't understand why people call it like one of his best. Like, I know I've never really been that much of a fan of it. There is, of course, Baby I'm Bleeding, which is incredible. There is I Cannot Fucking Wait Until Morrissey Dies. There's Williamsburg. Good shit. Let me just get it back on the pile. I can tell that someone is probably going to be complaining about the way I treat records. And you probably have a point. Because I'm very reckless when it comes to my belongings. Next up there is Magdalene by FKA Twigs. This, unlike the two previous albums, is an art pop album. It has a lot more, how do I say this? It is, I forgot what I was trying to say, but it has some really interesting themes, and the production is absolutely incredible. This is one of the cheapest records I actually bought. It is an interesting art inside, but which I'm not allowed to show on YouTube in full. But it's definitely something. Same with on the back. YouTube would probably not really like that. But yeah, this album is incredible. I especially like the tracks. Mary Magdalene. Is that the name of it? Is that the name of the track? I think it is Mary Magdalene. Fallen Alien is great. Holy Terrain. Home with You as well. Sad Day. Cellophane. There is just so many great tracks on this one. And every track here has just absolutely immaculate production. Mostly handled by Twigs herself. Noah Goldstein, who you might know for his contributions to Jesus. And also the one and only Nicholas, also known as Against All Logic. Incredible electronic producer. One of the most creative contemporary electronic producers out there. And he did a lot of production on this. Oops, YouTube is not gonna like that. Anyway, I really hope this video won't get flagged. Next up we got Mixtape Pluto by Future, which I really only got because it was really cheap, and because I want to play Plutowski during a live performance that we did with some records. This record is, it's a decent mixtape. I really like Future's more classic mixtapes. You know, the ones that are just pure like hard trap beats. However, this record only has the first half of the mixtape on it, which sucks. Like, not that the first half sucks, but just the fact that this is only the first half of a mixtape on a record. And also, the quality of the printing, like on the actual cover, is miserable. But at least maybe it doesn't make nice sounds. You tell me. But yeah, the actual pressing quality is alright. Thankfully, at least something nice. I'm gonna start making a new pile here just so that I don't squish the records too much. Next up we have Utopia by Travis Scott, which out of all the mainstream albums, I believe that Utopia is one of the best mainstream hip-hop albums that we got in the past several years. It really shows a lot of callbacks to Travis's old production work that he did on albums like Jesus, albums like Rodeo, which is also great, which I actually don't have it on vinyl, but I might get it at some point. And yeah, this is a double vinyl because the album is quite long and I need to fit it somehow. Actually, quite a lot of these are double records that I have. You have some interesting artwork on the inside. You have these photos of Travis with a lot of digital artifacts, which are pretty clearly inspired by Blackie. At least they look inspired by Blackie. And then you have these photos, which to my knowledge were taken by Harmony Korine, who is one of my favorite directors of all time. He made Gummo, which is a very difficult film to watch, but it's great. It's incredible. As for the album itself, there is a lot less trap elements compared to what Travis's former albums had, like for example Astro World and Birds in the Trap. I feel that there is a lot more variety in like drums compared to stuff he would usually be doing. For example, I mean, out of all the songs we have here, like there's you still got your trap songs, like for example Thank God, The Second Half of My Eyes, God's Country, Meltdown. But we have a lot more interesting stuff here. For example, Hyena, which is incredible. You have Circus Maximus, which just sounds like Black Skinhead by Kanye. But still sounds great in its own way. You have Telekinesis, which is an absolutely angelic outro performed by SZA. You have Till Further Notice, which has production by James Blake and also vocals from him. And drums from Metro, which is an absolutely incredible combination. I love James Blake. James Blake is one of my favorite producers of all time. And he did do quite a bit of work on this album, which I really appreciate. Generally a very underrated album, I feel like. We really overlook Utopia. And is my favorite Travis Scott album. Next up we have Run-DMC, Tougher Than Leather, some more old school hip hop. I haven't listened to this one in a long time, but out of all this, a lot of like first wave of hip hop, I would say, that's another interesting sound. Out of this first era of hip hop, I'd say that Run-DMC are probably my favorite. Mostly their first album. I mean, not this one. I forgot what it's called, but the one, it's like that. It has Crush Groove 1, Sucker MCs, and it has Rockbox, which Rockbox is such an incredible track, honestly. But also this one also has some great stuff. It has Run's House. It has I'm Not Going Out Like That, which is a source of a legendary drum break. It has the title track, Tougher Than Leather, which, to my knowledge, has been sampled by Future Sounds of London. I forgot which track it was that they sampled it on, but it's the one... and actually, I don't know, I probably can't remember what the name of it was, but... yeah, that's how I first discovered this album, for that sample. And I'm glad I did, because, it really shows the sort of, first, explosion of hip-hop in the mainstream. And I feel like it has aged really well, surprisingly. You know, without this, without Run-DMC, we would not have a bunch of other great rappers from the second wave, which was like the which was like the 90s, and also I guess the late 80s. And this is the late 80s, I guess, but like, you get me. Run-DMC started making music long before that. And yeah. Next up is a bit more of a controversial pick with 808s and Heartbreak by Kanye West. I understand that in 2026, having a physical copy of anything Kanye has done is not the best look, but still, like, you cannot really disagree that he was a great artist. Whether he still is highly debatable, and the answer is most likely no. But this album is really great. It uses a lot more cheap MIDI instruments compared to the previous Kanye albums, which mostly relied on samples. I mean, they still had some synthesizers, like for example in Graduation, but they are not as prominent on those albums. I mean, on Graduation they are, but here, kind of the synthetic stuff is like full on display. You know, Say You Will, the first track, instantly kicks off with a very artificial sounding choir from a synthesizer. Heartless uses that one-note flute melody, which is also very clearly MIDI. Welcome to Heartbreak has a bunch of string sounds, which also are very clearly MIDI. This was probably from the Cork Triton. My favorite track on this is probably Amazing. I feel like that one is very underrated. It's sort of like a mantra-like chant. And it just flows really nicely. It has those like Japanese taiko drums, which sound gorgeous on this album. Okay, I'm not sure if those are MIDI, if those are just sampled. We may never know. There's a verse from Young Jeezy, who... he's great, you know. Young Jeezy, I don't think I have to say much about him. Some younger people who might be watching this probably don't know who he is. Okay, I'm saying younger people as if, you know, I'm just 20, but still. And from this first pile, the last one we got is Bjork. We have Medulla by Bjork. Actually, wait, I actually want to mention one thing. Actually, no, whatever. No one cares, it's fine. Medulla by Bjork is, honestly, this is my favorite Bjork album, which is a pretty atypical choice. You know, people don't usually go to this one. This one is also very unique tap. It is a lot thinner compared to the other ones, and the plastic is a lot more glossy, which I like visually. But yeah, Medulla, this is yet another double album. You can see on the inside you have some more artwork. That looks really cool. Oops, I don't want this to slide out. But yeah, this is Bjork's probably most experimental album. It has tracks like Ancestors, which are just like I think they're like Icelandic or like Inuit folk music or something like that. Not really sure exactly about the cultural origin of that. However, you have essentially 0 actual instruments on this album. It's all done using the sound of humans, be it, you know, human voices mimicking instruments, singing obviously, beatboxing, and even some body percussion, which very much shines on this album. It makes it sound a lot more interesting. Sounds not like nothing else I've ever heard, that's for sure. It also has production by Matmos, which Matmos are an experimental electronic duo, whom I also am a huge fan of. Yeah, in case you like some of Bjork's more mainstream works, like for example, Homogenic or Debut, then I think you should absolutely check out Medulla, because it has really showing like those like her experimentation, like more than those albums. Even though Homogenic is also great, Debut is also great. Next up, we go to Astro World, which is, I don't even know. Do I have to mention anything about this album? Like, probably everyone watching this knows about it. It was Travis Scott's most commercially successful album, if I'm not wrong. It really popularized this sort of like more psychedelic form of trap production in the mainstream, and I don't know, I just think it's cool. It's a cool album, you know. It was cheap, so that's why I got it here. Like, you know, these aren't my favorite albums, these are just some albums I have on vinyl because they were cheap. You know, I just hit up the record store, and if I see something cool for cheap, I buy it if I have the money for it. But yeah, this has a lot of great tracks. The first track, Stargazing, really shows you the sort of style this album has. Great opener. You obviously have Sicko Mode, which was highly commercially successful, and probably has one of Drake's best performances during an era where he wasn't really doing much interesting stuff. So that was a breath of fresh air to hear. And then you have tracks like Stop Trying to Be God and Skeletons, which are not really hip-hop, which are more like psychedelic art pop stuff. I really like both of them. Stop Trying to Be God has contributions from James Blake once again. Skeletons was produced by Tame Impala, Kevin Parker. Then you also have No Bystanders, which is an incredibly energetic track, which probably has Travis's best verse, I feel like. Is that a generic pick? Is that something like a 14-year-old kid would probably say? Probably. But I like it. And then even on the second half, well, it's a little bit weaker. You also have some great tracks, like 5% Tint. You have Astro Thunder. You have Butterfly Effect, which, actually, never mind, I'm not a big fan of that one. But you also have the Closer Coffee Bean, which is great. I'm never a big fan of like the most like commercial successful tracks like Can't Say and Butterfly Effect. But I still feel like this album is really great for what it is. You know, one of the more interesting mainstream albums. Next up we go a bit older with Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here. This specifically is a Japanese pressing that I got for quite cheap at the local record store because it was used. And it is quite rare actually, so that makes it that much cooler. This is my favorite Pink Floyd album by far. I was never too big of a fan of Dark Side of the Moon, but I really like Metal and Atom, Heart, Mother. I don't know how to pronounce that word. My English sucks sometimes pronunciation-wise. But yeah, unlike their previous albums, Wish You Were Here is interesting in the way that it has a lot less tracks. It only has 5 tracks, or technically only 4. The album opens with the first 5 sections of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which is this long, slowly evolving classes with my sister for a few years. And then you get Welcome to the Machine, which is a more experimental, almost industrial tinged at times track with a really beautiful vocal. And then, I'm not sure how the track list exactly goes, so I might completely fuck this up. But after that, you have the title track, Wish You Were Here, which is a tribute to Syd Barrett, the founding member of Pink Floyd, who at this point was no longer a part of the band. You know, it's the thing that everyone learns on acoustic guitar first when they get one. And then you have a Cigar, which is a satirical track about record labels. And then you have the final 4 parts of Shine On You Crazy Diamond. So yes, very beautifully sequenced album. Very innovative for the time, honestly, I'd say. You know, some of y'all are probably sleeping on what your parents are listening to. So maybe give a try to something that your dad likes. It might be good. Or your dad might be listening to Tom MacDonald. I don't know. Maybe your parents have good music taste. Maybe they don't. Then I have this one, which is Ummagumma. This is probably Pink Floyd's least popular album. I got this vinyl record for free at the record store where I buy stuff because I bought a lot of stuff, so they gave it to me as a gift. This album was right after Syd Barrett left the band, and they were clearly trying to do stuff and didn't really know how to do stuff. The first half was recorded live. You have versions of Astronomy Domine, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, and Saucer Full of Secrets, and a new composition. I think it's a new composition, I'm not sure right now. New composition called Careful with That Axe, Eugene. And then you have the studio side of this album, which first has a 4-part piece called Sisyphus by Richard Wright. Then you have 2 pieces by Roger Waters, including Several Small Species, which is a collage of Roger Waters trying to make animal noises. It is questionable at best. Then you have The Narrow Way by David Gilmour, which is honestly quite good. I like that one. And then you have The Grand Vizier's Garden Party by Nick Mason, which I don't remember how it sounds. So yeah, this album is weird. I mean, not like too weird, like if you listen to noise, then it's probably not going to be that weird for you, but for Pink Floyd standards, it is definitely weird. And for people who heard it back then, I don't know, they didn't know what to really make of it. The sort of gatefold cover has a whole bunch of old photos of the band. I always like when reissues have that. And then you have this like infinitely recursing mirror image. Oops, the vinyl is sliding out of it. There, go back. Next up, we have this album. This is more of a a lot of stuff I have here is fairly known music, because that's usually the easiest stuff to get on vinyl. For all my noise stuff, we would have to go to cassette tapes and CDs, mostly cassette tapes. But here is something a lot more interesting. Here we have Muslimgauze. This is... actually can't really read that. Gaddafi Hand Grenade, I guess that's the title. This is one of the reissues done by Stellblatt after Muslimgauze's tragic death in 1999. This This is the 50th archival record. Interesting, there's a lot of them because he was an extremely prolific artist. He would often flood labels with demos to release. This one has the track Arab Jerusalem as the first track. And then the B-side has 3 tracks which are brand new to my knowledge. That being Jordan River and Lily Gaddafi Hand Grenade, which are these sort of like very tribal ambient pieces with a lot of percussion, a lot of usage of echo, delay, and some really interesting electronic drum sounds. I really like this one. It's far from my favorite, but I really think that the B-side on this is really underappreciated. And then the A-side is just Arab Jerusalem, which has already been released before. But yeah, I found this in Bratislava for 25 euros. So, of course I had to buy it. This is like 2024, I'm pretty sure. Back when I started buying records. Next up, actually I'm gonna leave this for a little bit later. I have this one which is still shrink wrapped. This is GNX by Kendrick Lamar. I got this like very soon after it released. And again, is there anything I have to say about this that hasn't been said before? It's a Kendrick album. It's definitely not his best, far from that, but I like it. There's a lot of great tracks. There's a much more West Coast sound compared to his other work. It is a lot lighter on a lot of tracks, Not as conceptual and thematically heavy. But I still really like it. Because not every album needs to be, absolute peak songwriting. It just needs to be enjoyable to listen to. Then we are getting to another one which is still shrink wrapped. That being Boards of Canada, in a beautiful place out in the country. I must admit, this is probably my least favorite Boards of Canada release. But I still have it because my friend bought it for me. I really like the cover as well. It has a lot of very old photos made using some analog cameras. You got like a bird. Then you have the number 4. And then here what looks like a window of sorts in some sort of building. Then on the back you have the photo of a woman, very blurry. I'm pretty sure, is this Ammo Bishop Roden? I'm not sure there's a photo of Ammo Bishop Roden or not. Then you have a drawing, children's drawing, and then you have a power line. Not sure what it means, not sure if you will ever know what it means, not sure if it even means anything. But who cares, it looks cool. Out of all the albums here, out of all the tracks here, I would say that Kid for Today is probably my favorite one. The tracks, there's also Zoetrope, which is a little bit darker sounding than Kid for Today, but it's still like this very mellow of a track, and I like that. I like more of kind of mellow stuff from their early period, stuff like Everything You Do Is a Balloon. I know, very generic big, but I like it, but I also really like their like more hip-hop oriented stuff. Like, for example, Rude Her Whirl, 6010, and a bunch of other tracks. Telephasic Workshop is incredible. And now we are getting to the last album I would talk about. I got this one from my bestie Valerie for my birthday when I was 18. That being Geogaddi. This is widely considered their best album, and I agree, because I am a part of a herd and don't have a single original opinion. It is definitely a lot darker than other BOC albums. just from the cover itself, it is a lot more warm colored compared to everything else they've done. Looks intimidating. You have sort of hexagonal pattern made of, I guess, the same photo repeated 6 times of a rather intimidating figure standing between 2 trees. The figure almost doesn't look human. Looks like some sort of skinwalker. Terrifying, I love it. And then on the back you get more hexagons. And you have more geometric kaleidoscopic shapes on the inside, which I'm gonna have to show you like this probably. Yep. Very interesting. Oops, I really don't want to fuck this up because this is a very beautiful record. But yeah, this is a very interesting album. There is a track at the end called Magic Window, which is just silence, which is there just to make the whole album 66 minutes and 6 seconds long. And actually the whole record that has Magic Window doesn't even have any vinyl grooves on it. It just has a etching of a family on the side, like the outline of a family of 4, which I find pretty cool. Again, whatever that means, I don't know what it means, but they're very cryptic, but that's what I like about them. They recently announced a new album called Inferno, which I will get to in a moment. I first want to talk about this a little bit because I just love this album so much, and this is honestly the only reason why I'm making this video, as an excuse to talk about Boards of Canada a little bit more. You have track Ready, Let's Go to start off the whole album. Then you have Music is Math, which is quite mellow, again, same as the first track. But you can see the sort of like darkness to it. It's definitely a lot different compared to their previous works. Then you have Beware the Friendly Stranger, which, if you know David Firth, if you have watched Salad Fingers, which if you've experienced this era of the internet, then you definitely have seen Salad Fingers. Interesting series. And Beware the Friendly Stranger is used I think in the first episode of Salad Fingers. Then you have Gyroscope, which is a track that makes me physically uncomfortable because it features mostly a reversed guitar combined with a recording of a child's voice saying some numbers. And I feel like, the child just sounds extremely distressed, even though they are not. It's from a number station called Cynthia. How fitting. Then you have a track called Dandelion, which mostly samples this one documentary, Preparation for a dive is always a dense time. And then you get into like the true meat of the album. Then you have Sunshine Recorder, In the Annex, which is an interlude but still good, Julian Candy, which is an absolutely incredible song, really showing this sort of like less ambient and more mature synthesizer and drum soundscape that this has compared to Music Has the Right to Children, and a sample from Season of the Witch, which is a kind of a weird B-movie. I've seen it. It's rather uninteresting. Then you have The Smallest Weird Number, which is a sound collage. 1969, another banger. You got a sample of the Branch Davidian cult, or like some sort of, I think it's from a documentary about them, not really sure right now. So this whole album, this whole EP is themed around the Branch Davidian cult. And essentially this was a cult that was ran by a guy who changed his name to David Koresh and called himself a god, or like some sort of prophet, not sure exactly right now. But then they moved to a small farm in Waco, Texas, and they started stockpiling weapons there, essentially turning into a doomsday cult. Ammo Bishop Roden was, I think, his wife or one of the other members of the cult. I'm like a high ranking. Not sure. Don't quote me on anything. But yeah, it samples. It samples a line about her. You also have this like really, like this vocal voice at the end of the song, which lives rent free in my head. Like that goes like 1969 in the sunshine. It's a very interesting track. Kind of doesn't really make me feel an emotion like any other song. Then you have Energy Warning, which is another interlude. Then you have The Beach at Red Point, which is a highly underrated track. Very really interesting synthesizer string sounds on it. And this weird, like almost like modem-like abstract electronic percussion. Opening the Mouth, another drone interlude. I have Alpha and Omega, which may be one of my favorite, which is another one of my favorite tracks on this album. It features a lot of interesting, like almost like world percussion. A lot of weird samples thrown. And it's just incredible. I Saw Drones, another short interlude. Then The Devil is in the Details, which is a interesting track because it almost sounds alive. I remember listening to it on good speakers in a small room. It almost sounded like the walls were melting, like the walls were covered in slime. It was so weird. And it has this like highly processed voice of a person, probably from some sort of like a meditation guide, I think. Then you have A's to B as B's to C, which is yet another sound collage. Then you have Over the Horizon Radar, which I don't remember how it sounds. Then you have Dawn Chorus, which is an absolute banger of a song. I need a drink. An absolute banger of a song that makes you feel like you're flying towards the sun at insane speeds. And as much as I love this, it is very hard to play for other people, mostly because of a sample of a child saying bye, which has been time stretched so heavily that it sounds like a woman moaning. And I cannot play this for other people because it's extremely awkward. But it's a banger. Then you have Diving Station, which has some interesting synthesized piano. You Could Feel the Sky, which has, again, very weird vocals, kind of like, almost like wailing vocals. Almost choir-like, except it's just one person. I don't know, it's hard to describe. And the percussion sounds like Velcro and latex. Very weird, but I love it. I have one more ambient piece called Corsair before Magic Window, the silent track. Incredible album. And I'm really excited for the new Birds of Canada album, Inferno, despite the fact that I'm completely broke because I lost my job. I still got all the money I possibly could so that I could pre-order the deluxe vinyl edition, because I'm not just gonna let a new Birds of Canada release slide past me without me getting a physical copy, because I love the aesthetic. Like, yeah, a lot of people see it as quite cheap. It kind of looks like someone trying to imitate Birds of Canada. But it feels more purposeful. Like, it still feels more deep compared to other stuff that people have done. There's clearly a lot of work put into it. Like, for example, even the VHS tapes. Like, compiling all of those like obscure sources and everything. It's more of such a dark vibe to it. Like, everything, like from the posters of Children Without Eyes to the title itself. Let me open my phone and let me go through track titles, because I really want to talk about this a bit more. Inferno, Birds of Canada. Okay, Inferno, we have it here. We have the track listing. We have Introit, or Intro IT, not exactly sure how it is supposed to be pronounced. But then you have Prophecy at 1420 megahertz, which I heard it's something to do with hydrogen, which, I think it's like something regarding like space exploration and stuff. But I'm not sure. I just saw it quickly on the Discord, but that's everything. But right after that, you have hydrogen, helium, lithium, leviathan, which really makes you, really gives you an idea of some of the themes. You have more references to chemicals, and then you have the biblical figure of a leviathan. Clearly some sort of like threat. And it would not be the first time that Birds of Kanda have referenced. My computer is going off. This would not be the first time that Birds of Kanda have referenced something like this, chemical weapons, chemical warfare. Then you have Age of Capricorn, which is a pretty clear reference to Aquarius, because essentially, according to some, I'm pretty sure it's just astrological stuff, like there is no science behind it. The Earth is currently in the Age of Aquarius, and then the Age of Capricorn is about to start in a couple thousand years. And we're going to have a song called Aquarius, which has been released around the time that I think the Age of Aquarius started. Not exactly sure. I'm not into astrology, so I don't know. But I find this reference very interesting. It really showing the sort of, because really, even though it's very, very, very macabre, very, very gloomy. What other words can I use? Morose, lugubrious. Shout out Little Ugly Mane. Despite this sort of darkness, you can see that it's still like, there's a lot of references to rebirth. In here you have then, the Age of Capricorn. Who knows if the Earth will be here to reach the supposed Age of Capricorn. But yeah, then they have the track Father and Son, which is the Tape 05, which has already been released, which is a beautiful ambient piece that I really love. It sounds surprisingly hopeful compared to the tone of everything else surrounding this album. Then I have Somewhere Right Now in the Future. Not sure what that's a reference to, but it's a very evocative title and I like it. They have Naraka. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's in Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, that's a word for hell in Hindu religions. But it's more so, not really hell, it's more like a purgatory. They don't really have, as far as I'm aware, again, I'm not an expert on Hinduism or Buddhism, but as far as I'm aware, they don't really have hell in the same way that Christianity has it. They more so have Naraka as purgatory, where essentially you go for your soul to be cleansed, so that you can then ascend so that you can then be properly reborn. Because they don't really have afterlife, they have rebirth, reincarnation. Acts of Magic, interesting title. According to the track length, it's an interlude. They have Memory Death, which, interesting, maybe it's a reference to dementia. Then you have The Word Becomes Flesh, which is, I think that's a passage from John, from the book of John. Not sure, but I'm pretty sure it is, if I remember correctly. Then you have Into the Magic Land, which, again, another reference to magic. I like that, similar to Acts of Magic a while ago. Blood in the Labyrinth can mean a whole lot of negative things about the current state of affairs in the world. Who knows? Deep Time, whatever that concept is. All Reason Departs. Kind of reminds me of the From One Source All Things Depend, which is a bonus track on the Japanese version of Geogaddi. Is also notably the longest track on this track list. So that's going to be an interesting one, hopefully. Then you also have Arena Americanada, which sounds very political, actually, which is weird because, Birds of Canada don't really get political, do they? I mean, there's one very important thought, but, this is a bit more deep. They have the process, which can mean a lot of things. It can mean the translation of The Trial by Kafka, for example. I really doubt it's actually that, but yeah, in some languages, The Trial by Kafka is translated as process. You retreat in time and space, another reference to death. And then I saw through plutonium, which plutonium is a philosophical concept that concerns essentially is the idea of a space where every single possibility of a universe is located. It can be quite hopeful as a title, seeing through every single possibility of our universe. And what's also interesting is that the continuous mix, which is going to be provided with the album if you pre-order it, is 70 minutes long, which, in case you don't know about the mythology of Birds of Canada, you have the number 70 is very important in their music. For example, here on the spine you can see this little logo, which is Music 70, which is their private label. Then you have the track 6010, which 60 plus 10 is 70. Then you have the track The Smallest Weird Number, which is 70. You have a lot of really interesting references. Also, what's interesting is that the new album Inferno was specifically referred to in the catalog of Warp with the catalog number Warp 496, which is interesting because the previous releases are 410. I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's Kame Concert by Square Pusher. My German probably sucked on that one. I apologize to everyone German watching this. Kame Concert by Square Pusher was, I think, 410 or 417, which Kame Concert is a great album, by the way. You should listen to that one as well. One of my favorite Square Pusher albums from the past releases. I really like his sort of more experimental jazzy stuff, when he does that, hell yeah. And it's not just his analog synthesizers and aim and breaks. I still love you, though. I love you, Jenkinson. No matter what you do, you're great, but come at concert, hell yeah. But yeah, the number 496 was clearly chosen on purpose for some reason. And I even know that there is some people were able to connect stuff to the number 96 in regards to the track list. I don't remember exactly what it was, but definitely it was quite interesting. There's going to be a whole lot more numerology for us to look into in regards to BOC. So my little unemployed soul is very happy. And also, what we're gonna get is probably a lot more no cult references because, Birds of Canada's early material, especially Geogaddi, focuses pretty deeply on cults, any sort of religious cults, but mostly the Branch Davidians. But especially in the promo videos that they share, on the VHS tapes, there's a lot of more religious themes, which we haven't really seen on Campfire Head Phase or Tomorrow's Harvest. So I am very excited for that, because I love Birds of Canada when they are this very esoteric and really do a lot of reference spirituality and stuff, hell yeah. Be it just because it's fun to overanalyze, or because spiritual as myself. I'm sorry, I'm just really excited for this, for Inferno, because, I was a Birds of Canada fan since about 2020. They were my favorite band for a long time, and they still are one of my favorite bands. And, the fact that after all these years we still got a new album announced, it's just incredible. And I'm very excited. So yeah, this will probably be everything for this video. I hope that you all found it relaxing, that you found it informative, that you found it